Tell this court what Helen Whitmore promised you under that porch, Mr. Cole." The judge's voice was steady, but every eye in the family courtroom turned toward Darius at once. He sat beside his attorney with his hands folded on the table, his dark suit fitting too tightly across the shoulders because it belonged to Andre Bennett, the only man he trusted enough to borrow from. Across the aisle, Rachel Whitmore watched him without blinking. In front of her attorney lay a color photograph taken through heavy rain. It showed Helen standing inches from Darius beneath the back porch of her home, one hand pressed against the center of his chest while his other hand was wrapped in a white towel. Behind them, 12 feet of cedar fencing leaned toward the wet grass. The picture did not show the splintered board near Darius's boots. It did not show the blood on the towel from a shallow cut across his palm. It did not show Maya watching through the kitchen screen or the gray sedan parked across the street with a man standing beside it. The photograph showed only what Rachel wanted the court to see: her mother touching her former husband. Darius lowered his eyes to the image. "She said she would make it worth my while," he answered. A quiet murmur moved through the gallery. Rachel's attorney stood and buttoned his jacket. Those were her exact words. "Yes. And you expect this court to believe the offer had nothing to do with Mrs. Whitmore's property, her money, or your personal relationship with her?" Darius looked toward the second row, where Helen sat beside a woman from a different law firm. At 55, Helen still carried herself with the careful dignity of someone who had spent years keeping her family's problems behind closed doors. That morning, however, the shadows beneath her eyes made her look older. She held a cream-colored envelope against her lap with both hands. Rachel's attorney lifted the photograph higher. 3 years passed without you entering Mrs. Whitmore's home. Then she called you to repair a fence, and within hours she was offering to reward you. Is that correct? No. Which part is incorrect? She did not call me first. The attorney paused. Who did she call? Darius glanced at Rachel. My daughter. Rachel shifted in her chair. On the table in front of her rested an emergency custody petition claiming Darius had manipulated Helen, gained access to private family records, and placed 9-year-old Maya in the middle of an inappropriate relationship. Darius had spent most of his life learning that a black man's silence could be mistaken for guilt and his anger could be mistaken for danger. In that courtroom, with his daughter waiting 2 rooms away, he chose every word as carefully as if Maya could hear him through the walls. Mrs. Whitmore sounded afraid, he said. Maya heard someone outside the house. That is why I went. Yet you stayed after the immediate danger had passed. The danger had not passed. Because of a damaged fence? Darius looked again at the photograph. Near the far edge of the image, almost hidden by rain, the man beside the gray sedan appeared to be holding something long and orange. A survey marker. No one in the courtroom had mentioned him yet. That fence was not damaged by the storm, Darius said. Rachel's attorney placed the photograph on the evidence table. We are discussing your conduct, Mr. Cole, not a repair job. They are the same thing. The judge leaned forward. Explain. Darius slowly turned toward Helen. She gave the smallest nod, but fear remained in her eyes. He understood then that this hearing was not only about Maya, and the person trying to take his daughter had never been the only person in danger. Mrs. Whitmore did not offer me money, he said. She offered me the truth. The courtroom became completely still. The judge looked down at the cream-colored envelope in Helen's hands. What truth? Darius faced Rachel for the first time. Her confidence faltered before he spoke. The truth about why someone wanted that fence on the ground, why Helen was afraid inside her own home, and why my daughter had to be taken away before she could tell anyone what she saw. 72 hours earlier, Darius Cole had promised himself he would never step inside the Whitmore house again. By 7:30 that morning, one frightened phone call from Maya's grandmother was about to make him break that promise. 72 hours earlier, at 6:15 in the morning, Darius Cole stood barefoot in the kitchen of his 2-bedroom house, slicing an apple into even pieces while his 9-year-old daughter searched the hallway for a permission slip she swore had disappeared overnight. It was on the counter, Maya called. Paper does not walk, Darius said, sealing the apple slices inside her lunch container. Maybe the dog took it. We do not have a dog. Maya appeared in the doorway wearing one sneaker, holding the other, with the missing permission slip pressed against her chest. Darius raised one eyebrow. Then we have a very responsible imaginary dog. Maya tried not to smile and failed. These quiet mornings were the life Darius had rebuilt after Rachel left 3 years earlier. Breakfast before sunrise, homework checked, hair ribbons found, and promises kept without ceremony. His carpentry and home repair business did not make him wealthy, but it gave him enough control over his time to attend school meetings, doctor appointments, and every small moment Maya would remember long after she forgot what anything cost. Rachel had once promised to call every night. For a while, she had tried. Then the calls came later, shorter, and less often. Darius never used her absences to turn Maya against her. When Maya asked why her mother forgot a birthday call, he said adults sometimes lost track of time. When she asked whether Rachel still loved her, he answered yes, because a child should not have to carry the full weight of an adult's confusion. The only boundary Darius kept for himself was the Whitmore house. He had not crossed Helen's doorway since the divorce. Too much of his old life remained there, including memories of a family he had once believed would defend him when things became difficult. Helen had never treated him cruelly, but when Rachel blamed him for the marriage ending, Helen had remained silent. Darius had learned that silence could leave a wound without ever raising its voice. At 7:20, Maya's tablet began ringing beside the fruit bowl. Grandma Helen appeared on the screen. Maya answered. Immediately. Grandma, I found my permission slip. Darius turned toward the coffee maker, giving them privacy until Maya's cheerful voice changed. Grandma. A rough scraping sound came through the speaker, slow and uneven, like something dragging across wood. Then came a hurried breath. Darius set down his mug. Put her on speaker. Maya obeyed. Helen, are you alone? The line stayed quiet for several seconds. A lock clicked in the background. Darius, Helen finally said. I did not realize you were listening. Are you alone? Yes. Another faint scrape followed, closer this time. What happened? Helen attempted a laugh, but it sounded thin. Part of the back fence came down in the storm. I only need the name of someone who can repair it. Call the company that handled your neighbor's deck. They cannot come until next week. Then call Graham. He has managed this family's problems for more than 20 years. Helen did not answer. Darius noticed the silence, but did not press it. Maya leaned closer to the tablet. Grandma, what was that sound? Another lock turned. Nothing, sweetheart. Darius's voice hardened slightly. Why are you locking doors? Helen drew a careful breath. Because there was someone in the yard last night. The kitchen became still. Did you call the police? He asked. They came. They found no one. What did you see? Only a figure near the back gate. Then the porch light came on, and the fence was already down. Darius looked through the kitchen window at the calm Georgia morning. Maya should have been leaving for school, and he had 2 paying jobs waiting before noon. He also had a promise to himself that he would never again be pulled into Whitmore family secrets. Then Maya touched his wrist. Dad? She whispered. Grandma is scared. Darius looked at his daughter and understood that going back was not forgiveness, and it was not surrender. It was protection. He picked up his truck keys. Get your backpack. Maya blinked. Are we going to Grandma's? Yes. As she hurried toward the hallway, Darius lifted the tablet. Helen, keep every door locked and stay away from the yard until we arrive. He ended the call before old anger could change his mind. 3 years after leaving the Whitmore house behind, Darius was crossing that boundary again, unaware that what waited beyond it was far more dangerous than a fence brought down by a storm. The drive to Helen Whitmore's house took 31 minutes, and Darius spent most of it watching the road, as if concentration could keep old memories from entering the truck. Maya sat beside him with her backpack between her feet, quiet in the deliberate way she became when arranging a question. Are you still mad at Grandma? She finally asked. I am not mad, Darius said. You have the face you make when somebody says they will pay you next week. That face means I am being careful. With Grandma. With old problems. Maya watched the houses pass. Do old problems stay old if nobody fixes them? Darius glanced at her. Usually they get harder to fix. Helen lived in an older neighborhood outside Marietta, where oak trees arched over brick homes and deep lawns. She was waiting on the porch when Darius pulled into the driveway, wearing dark slacks and a cream cardigan despite the warmth. Her silver hair was pinned neatly, but her right hand trembled when Maya ran up the steps. There is my girl, Helen said, holding her longer than usual. Darius noticed the porch light still burning, curtains drawn halfway across every downstairs window, and a wooden chair braced beneath the front doorknob. "Thank you for coming," Helen said. "Show me the fence." She nodded and led them through the house because the side gate would not open. Near the staircase, pencil marks recorded Maya's height from age 3 through the previous Christmas. Maya smiled. "Grandma made me stand straight 3 times. You kept lifting your heels," Helen said. A few steps farther, a pale rectangle marked the place where the family portrait had once hung. Darius remembered Thomas behind Helen, Rachel holding baby Maya, and his own arm around them all. "I put it away after the divorce," Helen said. "You did not have to." "I know." Darius let the answer remain where it was and continued outside. 2 cedar panels had collapsed inward across nearly 12 feet of wet grass. The gate hung crooked, but the support posts had not failed the way storm damage would usually did. Maya pointed toward the rear trees. "The wind came from there. The branches kept hitting my window." Darius followed her hand. The panels had fallen toward the wind instead of away from it. He crouched beside the nearest post and cleared mud from the hardware. Fresh crescent-shaped marks scored the bolt heads, and the washers sat slightly loose against the wood. He checked the second post and found the same pattern. Someone had worked a wrench across both sets before the storm. A shallow heel print and a narrow drag line crossed the wet ground toward the hedge, too sharp to have survived several days of weather. "This fence was weakened before it fell," Darius said. Helen folded her arms. "You are certain?" "I am certain the hardware did not loosen itself. I am not certain who touched it or why." He moved along the fence line, testing each post with both hands. At the far corner stood an older cedar post, darker near the base where a rectangular section of wood had been replaced years earlier. Darius remembered Thomas stopping him from changing it during another repair. The old man had insisted that post remain exactly where it was, even though the reason had never made sense. Darius pressed the wood once, found it solid, and moved on without comment. Near the hedge, an orange survey ribbon fluttered from a low branch. He untied it and examined the fresh knot. "Did you authorize a survey?" Helen shook her head. "Graham mentioned a problem with the back lot." "What kind of problem?" "He said the boundary might not be where we believed it was." Her voice remained controlled, but her eyes shifted toward the kitchen window. "When did he tell you?" 2 days ago." "And the gray car?" Helen looked at him sharply. "Maya said one passed yesterday." Helen hesitated. "It has driven by several times. Sometimes it slows near the mailbox." "Did you see the driver?" "No." "Did Graham know?" "He said I was probably noticing an appraiser or a neighbor." Helen spoke carefully, like a woman repeating an explanation she had tested many times and still did not believe. Maya had followed them into the yard. "Grandma, why do you look at the windows every time a car goes by?" Helen tried to smile. "I am only being cautious." Maya looked at Darius. That is the grown-up word for scared. The sentence stripped the politeness from the moment. Helen lowered her eyes, then straightened again. "I know what I saw," she said. "I also know Graham has handled this family's affairs for more than 20 years. When someone you trust tells you that grief is making you imagine things, you begin checking your own memory before you question theirs." Darius looked at the orange ribbon in his hand, the fresh tool marks, and the broken panels opening the yard to anyone who wanted access. "Maya, go inside and lock the front door." "What are you going to do?" "Make sure nothing else was touched." Maya obeyed. Helen remained beside him. "I called because I needed a repair," she said. "I did not mean to pull you into anything more." Darius met her eyes. "You did not call me. You called Maya." Helen looked toward the house, where her granddaughter watched through the screen door. Darius understood then why she had reached through a child instead of calling the attorney, relatives, or family friends who had surrounded her for years. Helen was not helpless. She was afraid that the person she trusted to explain the danger might be part of the reason she no longer trusted herself. Darius closed his hand around the orange ribbon and looked once more at the fallen fence. Whatever Helen feared had not arrived with the storm. It had been close to this family long before the first board touched the ground. Helen watched Maya disappear into the kitchen, then turned back toward Darius with the expression of someone deciding how much truth she could afford. "Graham says the rear 12 feet of the property may have been transferred after Thomas died," she said. Darius looked past her toward the broken fence line. "Transferred to whom?" "North Lake Residential." He knew the company. Northlake had been buying older homes throughout Cobb County, replacing wide yards and brick ranch houses with tightly packed luxury townhomes. Their offers arrived politely, then became less polite when homeowners refused. "Did you sign anything?" Darius asked. "No, did Thomas?" "Not that I know of." Helen hesitated. "Graham brought me a copy of an agreement yesterday. It has my signature." Darius studied her face. "But you did not sign it." "I would remember giving away part of the land Thomas spent 30 years paying for." Her voice remained calm, but the last words carried a quiet offense. Darius nodded. "Show me." Inside, Helen removed a folder from a locked drawer beneath the kitchen counter. Maya sat at the table with a notebook open, pretending to work while listening to every sound in the room. Darius took the folder to the far end of the counter. The agreement appeared ordinary at first glance. Helen's name was printed beneath a signature, and Graham Ellis's office was listed as the preparing firm. The document claimed Helen had approved the sale of a narrow strip along the rear property line 11 months earlier. Darius checked the date twice. "You were not in Georgia that week," he said. Helen looked at him. "How do you know?" "Maya had her school art show. You called from Rachel's apartment in Charlotte because your flight had been canceled." Maya raised her hand from the table. "Grandma missed my painting of the moon." "I remember," Helen said softly. Darius placed the document down. "Then either this signature was copied, or someone placed it on paperwork you never saw." Helen's eyes moved toward Graham's name at the bottom of the page. "He told me grief can affect memory. Grief does not change airline records." Darius photographed each page with his phone and sent the images to Rebecca Lane, an attorney Andre had used during a contract dispute. He asked her to check the county filings and call him as soon as possible. Then he returned to the yard. Near the rear hedge, he found 2 additional survey ribbons and a wooden stake pressed into the soil approximately 4 feet inside Helen's existing property line. The stake carried a faded Northlake logo. Someone was not merely claiming the land. Someone had begun marking it as though the dispute were already settled. Darius pulled a tape measure from his truck and recorded the distance from the house to each marker. Maya followed him with a pencil and wrote the numbers in her notebook. 48 feet, 6 inches, he said. She repeated it carefully. Helen stood on the porch, one hand gripping the railing. "You do not have to involve Maya in this." Darius looked toward his daughter. "She is not involved in the dispute. She is helping me measure a yard." Maya nodded with great seriousness. "I am the assistant." A faint smile crossed Helen's face, then vanished when a car slowed near the front of the house. Darius heard it before he saw it. A gray sedan rolled past the driveway, continued half a block, then turned at the corner. Helen stepped backward toward the door. Maya noticed. "Was that the car?" she asked. Helen did not answer. Darius walked to the side of the house and watched the sedan disappear between the trees. He could not see the driver, but a strip of orange survey ribbon lay on the rear floorboard, visible through the window as it passed. When he returned, Helen had locked the screen door behind herself without realizing Maya was still outside. She opened it quickly, embarrassed. "This has been happening for 2 weeks," she admitted. "The same car passes in the morning and again near sunset." Graham said it was probably an appraiser. Appraisers schedule visits. He said Northlake was being thorough. Northlake does not own this property. Darius's phone rang. Rebecca Lane spoke for less than a minute, but every sentence made his expression harder. The county had recorded the transfer document 8 months earlier. The filing included a notarization from an employee at Graham's office who had retired soon afterward. Northlake had recently applied for preliminary approval to combine Helen's rear lot with 2 neighboring parcels. A planning review was scheduled for the following week. Darius ended the call and looked at Helen. "They are not trying to convince you to sell anymore." "What are they doing?" "They are trying to make it look like you already did." Maya closed her notebook. "Can they take Grandma's house?" "Not if the truth reaches the right people first," Darius said. He turned toward the fence and saw something he had missed. Earlier, the loosened panels had fallen across the exact section Northlake claimed to own. If they remained down long enough, surveyors could enter without opening the gate and photograph the yard as an unsecured boundary. The damage was not random intimidation. It was preparation. Darius took his drill from the truck. "I am replacing the supports, securing every panel, and installing cameras before dark." Helen shook her head. "Your whole day is gone already." "Then it is gone. I cannot ask you to do this for free." You did not. Darius. He met her eyes. This is not about what happened between you and me 3 years ago. It is not even about the fence. Someone is trying to make you doubt your own memory while they take something you never agreed to give. I know what that looks like. Helen understood the part he did not say. She had watched Rachel rewrite the end of their marriage while remaining silent because speaking would have divided the family. That silence had cost Darius his trust in her. Now another person was using the same quiet uncertainty against her. There is something else, Helen said. Rachel called last night. Darius stopped unpacking his tools. What did she want? She knew about Northlake's offer. She said selling would solve everyone's problems. How did she know? Helen looked toward Graham's name on the document inside the kitchen. That is the question I was afraid to ask. By early afternoon, the humidity had thickened around the yard, and the clouds above the trees had turned the color of wet cement. Darius worked without wasting movement. He removed the damaged posts, measured new supports, and reinforced the gate with hardware strong enough to make another quiet attempt impossible. Maya carried screws in a plastic cup and announced each measurement back to him as though the job depended entirely on her memory. Helen moved between the kitchen and porch with water, sandwiches, and questions she rarely finished asking. Every few minutes, her eyes drifted toward the street. Darius noticed, but he did not tell her to stop. Fear did not disappear because someone called it unreasonable. It disappeared when the reason for it was removed. Near 4 o'clock, the first drops of rain struck the porch roof. Darius lifted the last cedar panel into place while Maya watched from the kitchen window. The ground beneath his boots had turned slick, and when the lower edge of the panel shifted, he caught it before it fell. A rough corner scraped across his palm. He set the wood down and closed his hand around the sting. Darius, Helen called from the porch. It is fine. Your hand is not fine. It is a shallow cut. Come inside before you turn a shallow cut into a larger problem. Her tone carried the same quiet authority she had used years earlier when he tried to repair a leaking sink during Thanksgiving dinner. He almost smiled at the memory, then stopped himself. Helen brought a clean towel and a small first aid box to the covered porch. Rain began falling harder, drumming against the roof and blurring the yard beyond them. Darius stood near the railing while she cleaned his palm and wrapped it with careful hands. You still do this, she said. Do what? Act as though stopping for 5 minutes will cause everything around you to collapse. Darius looked toward the unfinished panel. Sometimes 5 minutes is enough. Not everything is yours to hold together. That is easy to say when you are not the one explaining to a child why another adult did not show up. Helen's hands became still. You are talking about Rachel. I am talking about people who make promises and leave someone else to carry them. The words were sharper than he intended, but Helen did not retreat. She finished the bandage and looked at him with a sadness that did not ask for forgiveness. I should have spoken 3 years ago, she said. When Rachel blamed you for everything, I knew parts of it were not true. Darius held her gaze. Knowing and standing beside someone are not the same thing. No, Helen said. They are not. He shifted his weight, and she placed one hand against the center of his chest to steady him when his boots slipped on the wet porch board. The gesture lasted only a second, practical and instinctive, but a flash appeared near the driveway. Darius turned. A gray sedan moved slowly past the house. Through the rain, someone in the passenger seat lowered a phone. Was that the same car? He asked. Helen stepped toward the railing, but the sedan had already reached the corner. I could not see. Darius started toward the steps. Helen caught his sleeve. Do not follow it. I only need the plate. Please. The fear in her voice stopped him more effectively than her hand. She released his sleeve and looked toward the unfinished fence. Finish it, she said. I will make it worth your while. Darius went still. Rain filled the silence between them. He had heard wealthy clients use similar words before, usually when they wanted special treatment, quiet favors, or work done without questions. Mrs. Whitmore, he said carefully, I do not accept payment that comes with silence. Helen stared at him, then understood the meaning he had taken from her words. That is not what I meant. Then tell me what you meant. She went inside and returned carrying a thick cream-colored envelope. The paper looked old at the edges, as though it had been opened and closed many times. These are letters, printed messages, and copies of emails Rachel sent me over the last 3 years, Helen said. Some were written when she was angry, some when she wanted money, some when she believed you would never see them. Darius did not take the envelope. What do they say? That she chose to leave. That you never kept Maya from her. That she ignored calls because she wanted a life without responsibility. They also show that Graham helped her receive money from Thomas's estate before the property transfer appeared. Darius's expression hardened. Why are you giving me this now? Rachel told me last night that if I refused Northlake's offer, she would challenge your custody. She said Graham had already explained how to prove you were unstable and financially desperate. Helen extended the envelope. This could protect you. Darius looked at it for a long moment. One set of papers could expose every lie Rachel had told and make her custody threat collapse before it began. Then he imagined Maya old enough to read them, discovering that her mother had described motherhood as a burden she wanted to escape. He stepped back. No. Helen lowered the envelope slightly. Darius, you may not have another chance. I will find another way. Why protect Rachel after everything she has done? I am not protecting Rachel. He looked through the kitchen window, where Maya sat with her pencil resting against her cheek. I am protecting the part of my daughter that still wants to believe her mother can become better. Helen's eyes filled, but she did not cry. You would risk losing custody rather than use the truth? Truth is not the same as a weapon. A car door closed in the driveway. Both of them turned. Rachel stepped out of a white sport utility vehicle, holding her phone at chest level. Her eyes moved from Helen's hand against Darius's chest to the envelope between them. Then she raised the camera and took another photograph. Rachel crossed the driveway with her phone still raised. Rain darkened the shoulders of her coat, but her eyes stayed fixed on Darius's bandaged hand, Helen's face, and the cream-colored envelope between them. So this is what has been happening, she said. Darius remained beneath the porch roof. Put the phone away. Why? You were comfortable being seen before I arrived. Helen stepped forward. Rachel, stop. No, Mother. You call my former husband, bring him into this house, and hand him private family letters. Those letters concern Maya. Maya is my daughter. The words came out too quickly, sharpened by fear rather than certainty. Darius glanced toward the kitchen. Maya stood behind the screen door with her notebook pressed against her chest. He lowered his voice. She can't hear you. Rachel's expression softened for one brief second, then tightened again. Maybe she should hear how carefully you have been working your way back into this family. Darius felt anger rise, but refused to let it speak for him. I have never kept Maya from you. You make every visit feel like an examination. You missed the last 4. Rachel flinched as if he had raised his voice, though he had not. Helen extended the envelope. He refused to take it. Rachel gave a brittle laugh. Of course he did. He does not need letters if you are planning to give him the house. Helen went still. Who told you I was changing my estate? Rachel hesitated. Graham said you had become confused about certain decisions. Graham had no authority to discuss my affairs with you. He was trying to protect me. From whom? Rachel looked at Darius. From being replaced. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Darius saw the fear underneath everything else. Maya choosing him, Helen trusting him, and a family Rachel believed was closing ranks without her. Helen's voice softened but did not weaken. No one replaced you. You left spaces empty, and other people had to stand in them. Rachel looked away. Darius spoke before the moment became cruelty. This is not helping Maya. Helen folded the envelope against her chest. Rachel, Northlake has been marking the back lot. The transfer papers carry a signature I do not recognize as mine. Rachel's face changed. That is not what Graham told me. Before Helen could answer, a dark sedan turned into the driveway. Graham Ellis stepped out beneath a black umbrella, his charcoal suit untouched by the weather. He climbed the porch with the calm expression of a man arriving to restore order. Rachel said there was a family disturbance, he said. There was a disagreement, Helen replied. Graham's gaze moved briefly to the envelope. You should not be handling those letters in this condition. Silence settled over the porch. Helen tightened her grip. What letters? Graham paused only once. The documents Rachel mentioned. Rachel turned toward him. I did not mention letters. His expression never broke. Then I misunderstood. Everyone is upset, and words are being used imprecisely. He reached toward Helen's arm. Let us go inside and discuss this privately. Helen stepped back. Do not tell me what I remember. Graham gave her a patient smile. I am asking you to avoid decisions made under pressure. He looked at Darius. Mr. Cole, leaving now would protect everyone from further misunderstanding. He is here because I asked him to come, Helen said. And that choice may become relevant if anyone questions your judgment. Maya opened the screen door. Grandma knows why Dad is here. Graham's smile shifted toward her. Maya, this is an adult matter. She looked at the envelope, then at him. But you knew what it was before Grandma told you. The question was simple, almost puzzled, and that made it harder to dismiss. Graham adjusted his grip on the umbrella. I made an assumption. Rachel stepped toward Maya. Come with me, sweetheart. Maya moved behind Darius. I want to go home with Dad. Hurt crossed Rachel's face. He has made you afraid of me. Darius turned enough to keep Maya close without hiding her from her mother. Do not make her choose in the rain. Rachel lifted her chin. My attorney is filing for emergency custody tonight. Helen stared at her. On what basis? That he is using Maya to influence you and gain access to this property. That is false. Graham says the court may still take it seriously. Graham did not confirm or deny it. Helen reached for the porch railing. Her face drained of color, and her breathing became shallow. Grandma, Maya whispered. Darius moved toward her, but Graham stepped into his path. Give her space. Darius stopped before contact could turn into another accusation. Maya, bring her medicine from the kitchen counter. Maya ran inside. Darius looked at Rachel. Call paramedics. The police are already coming. Call paramedics now. His voice remained controlled, but it left no room for argument. Rachel dialed. When officers arrived, they separated the adults, recorded statements, and made no judgment about custody or the property dispute. Paramedics treated Helen and recommended hospital observation. Rachel's attorney filed the emergency request later that afternoon, and near sunset Darius received electronic notice that the court would review temporary restrictions that night. Until then, he was instructed not to contact Helen directly or return to the property. As Darius drove away with Maya, she looked through the rear window. Graham stood alone beneath the porch light. At his feet lay the cream-colored envelope Helen had dropped. He glanced toward the departing truck, bent down, and picked it up before anyone else could reach it. The temporary order arrived by email at 9:47 that night. Darius read it twice at the kitchen counter, while Maya sat at the table with a blanket around her shoulders and a cup of hot chocolate growing cold between her hands. The order did not remove Maya from his care, but it prohibited him from returning to Helen's property or contacting her directly until the emergency hearing. Rachel's request described him as financially unstable, emotionally manipulative, and determined to gain influence over the Whitmore estate. Darius had spent years building a business, raising a child, and protecting people who did not always protect him in return, yet a few carefully arranged sentences had made his life look like something he barely recognized. Is Grandma still at the hospital? Maya asked. Yes. Andre called the front desk. She is stable and staying overnight for observation. Can I talk to her? Not tonight. Maya stared into the cup. Because Mom said you were dangerous? Darius folded the order and placed it face down. Because adults sometimes use big words when they are afraid. Are you afraid? He looked at her. Yes. Maya seemed surprised by the honesty. What are you afraid of? Making the wrong choice because I am angry. She nodded slowly, as though that answer made more sense than courage would have. At 10:18, Darius's phone vibrated beside the sink. The alert came from the temporary camera he had mounted beneath Helen's porch roof. Motion detected near the rear fence. He opened the live feed. Two men in dark rain jackets stood beside the oldest corner post. One held a flashlight low to the ground, while the other removed the new screws Darius had installed only hours earlier. They were not trying to enter the house. They were searching beneath the fence line. Darius reached for his truck keys by instinct, then stopped. Returning would violate the court order and turn every accusation against him into evidence. He called the police, gave the address, and explained that he had remote camera access but was legally prohibited from approaching the property. Then he called Andre Bennett. I need you near Helen's house, Darius said. Stay across the street. Do not speak to anyone. Record what you see and wait for the police. Andre did not waste time asking unnecessary questions. I am leaving now. Maya had moved beside Darius and was watching the screen. He tilted the phone away. You should be in bed. They are digging by Grandpa's post. Darius looked back at the live feed. The men had lifted the loosened panel and were pressing a narrow metal rod into the soil near the old cedar post at the rear corner. Why do you call it Grandpa's post? He asked. Maya pulled the blanket tighter. Grandma told me Grandpa used to say he trusted that post more than he trusted a bank. When did she tell you that? Last Christmas. She said he buried family things there when they finally paid off the house. I thought she meant old pictures. Darius remembered Thomas Whitmore refusing to let him replace that post years earlier, even when the wood began to split near the base. Thomas had laughed and called it stubbornness, but his eyes had never matched the joke. Darius called the responding officer again and shared what Maya remembered. 12 minutes later, Andre sent a short video from across the street. A gray sedan was parked behind the property. Its license plate was visible beneath the streetlight. One of the men knelt beside the post while the other carried a small metal case from the ground. Before they reached the car, patrol lights reflected across the wet pavement. The men stopped and placed the case in the grass. There was no struggle, only raised hands, measured instructions, and the sound of rain against parked cars. Darius kept Maya away from the video. Nearly an hour passed before an officer called him back. The men claimed they worked for a surveying subcontractor hired by Northlake Residential. They said they had been sent to recover equipment from disputed land. Neither could explain why they came after 10 at night, why they removed a repaired fence panel, or why the case they uncovered bore the initials TW. The officer said the case would remain sealed until Helen or an independent attorney authorized it to be opened. Do not release it to Graham Ellis, Darius said. He prepared the disputed transfer, knew about private letters he was never told about, and was standing on the porch before the police arrived. The officer asked whether Darius had proof. Not yet, he said, but the camera footage proves someone wanted what was under that post before the court could see it. The next morning, Rebecca Lane contacted the hospital and obtained Helen's written authorization. The case was opened in the presence of a county investigator. Inside were an original survey, several property tax receipts, a notarized letter from Thomas, and a small digital recorder sealed in plastic. None of the items solved everything alone. The survey showed the disputed strip belonged entirely to Helen. The letter stated that Graham had access to copies of the estate documents, but no authority to transfer land. The recorder contained a brief conversation in which Thomas refused Graham's request to approve a future sale to Northlake. The clearest evidence came from the men themselves. Confronted with the camera footage and the sealed case, one admitted that Graham's office had hired them through a private contractor and instructed them to recover anything buried near the corner post before the property review. By noon, the transfer had been suspended pending investigation, and Graham's role in the filing was under formal review. None of that erased Rachel's custody petition. None of it explained why she had trusted Graham over her own mother. But the truth no longer lived only inside frightened memories. That evening, Maya sat beside Darius on the front steps as sunlight broke through the remaining clouds. Grandpa knew somebody might lie, she said. He knew somebody might try. So he buried the truth. Darius shook his head gently. He buried evidence. Truth still needs people willing to stand beside it. Maya leaned against his shoulder. Will Mom stand beside it? Darius looked toward the quiet street. I do not know. Will you? He thought about the envelope in Graham's hands, the hearing ahead, and every painful fact he could use to make Rachel look smaller. Yes, he said, but I will not use the truth to become cruel. That would only build another fence. Maya would have to spend her whole life climbing. The emergency hearing began 3 days later in the same family courtroom, where one photograph had turned a brief moment beneath Helen's porch into an accusation. Darius sat beside Rebecca Lane with his hands folded on the table, Andre's dark suit pulling slightly across his shoulders. Maya waited in a nearby conference room with a court-appointed child specialist. Helen sat behind him, pale but composed after leaving the hospital that morning. Rachel faced him from the opposite table, while Graham remained several seats away beside his own attorney. A county investigator sat in the back row, present only because the property evidence was being reviewed in a separate matter. Rachel's attorney began with the photograph. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Whitmore had one hand against your chest while offering to make your time worthwhile. Is that correct? She was steadying me after I slipped, Darius said. I had cut my hand repairing the fence. And the envelope she was holding? Private letters. About Rachel? Yes. Did you read them? No, why not? Darius looked toward Rachel. Because protecting Maya does not require humiliating her mother. The attorney let the silence linger before asking whether Darius had gone to Helen's home seeking money, property, or influence. No, Darius answered. I went because Maya heard fear in her grandmother's voice, and the fence had been deliberately weakened. Rebecca rose before the questioning could drift further. Your Honor, the property evidence is not being offered so this court can decide ownership or criminal responsibility. It is being offered to establish why Mr. Cole was at the house and whether the danger he described was real. The judge allowed the limited purpose. Rebecca introduced the camera footage showing two men returning after dark and removing a repaired fence panel. She submitted the original survey, Thomas Whitmore's notarized letter, and the recording in which he refused a proposed sale to Northlake. The county investigator confirmed only that those materials were part of an active inquiry and that no final conclusion had been reached regarding Graham or the disputed transfer. The evidence did not prove every accusation, but it showed that Darius had not invented the threat to gain access to Helen's property. Rachel's attorney shifted to Darius's finances and stability. Rebecca responded with 3 years of business records, school attendance reports, medical records, and testimony from the child specialist. Maya was consistently cared for, performing well in school, and secure in Darius's home. Her greatest fear was not physical danger. It was being forced to choose between her parents. Helen was called next. She walked to the witness chair without assistance. Did Darius ask you for money? Rebecca asked. No. Did he ask for land, inheritance, or control of your estate? No. Why did you offer him the envelope? Helen looked toward Rachel before answering. Because it contained messages that could have helped him defend himself in a custody dispute. I believed he might need them. What did he do? He refused to read them. Why? Because Maya might one day learn what they contained, and he did not want her protected at the cost of being wounded by her mother's worst choices. Rachel lowered her head. Helen's voice remained steady. Darius did not come to my house for money. He came because my granddaughter was afraid for me, and because I had stopped trusting my own judgment after being told repeatedly that grief had made me confused. When Rachel testified, the judge asked how she had learned about the property offer. Rachel glanced toward Graham, but did not wait for his approval. He told me my mother might remove me from the estate, she said. He said Darius was using Maya to regain influence over the family. Did you ask your mother whether that was true? No. Did you ask Mr. Cole whether he wanted money or property? No. Her voice tightened. I believed Graham because he understood what I was already afraid of. My mother trusting Darius again. Maya not wanting to come with me. Being replaced in a family I had already damaged. The judge studied her carefully. Fear may explain a decision. It does not make the decision responsible. Rachel nodded. I understand. There was no immediate forgiveness in the room, only the first honest admission of fault. The judge denied the emergency request to change custody. Maya would remain in Darius's primary physical custody. Rachel would continue with supervised visitation, begin counseling, and return for a review hearing after demonstrating consistent involvement. The temporary restriction preventing Darius from contacting Helen was dissolved. The court made no ruling on the land transfer, Northlake, or Graham's legal responsibility. Those questions would proceed separately. Before closing the hearing, the judge asked whether Darius believed Rachel's visits should be suspended entirely. He shook his head. Maya needs protection, structure, and honesty. She does not need another parent disappearing from her life. Rachel looked at him. After everything I did, why leave the door open? Darius answered without anger. Because a boundary can protect a child without becoming a punishment. You should have to earn trust back, but Maya should not learn that justice means abandoning people forever. Outside the courtroom, Maya ran toward him and wrapped both arms around his waist. He rested one hand against the back of her head until her breathing slowed. Helen approached a moment later. You defended my name without pretending nothing changed between us, she said. Respect changed, Darius replied. Anything beyond that needs time, honesty, and no fear making the decisions. Maya looked between them, then took Helen's hand and Darius's hand at the same time. Neither adult called the moment a new beginning. They simply stood together in the hallway, knowing that one ruling could stop an immediate injustice, but only months of consistent choices could rebuild what years of silence had broken. 6 months later, the fence behind Helen Whitmore's house stood straight again, but Darius had rebuilt it with one important difference. The old narrow gate had been replaced by a wider cedar entrance that opened toward the garden, broad enough for two people to walk through side by side. When Helen asked why he changed the design, Darius told her the original gate had always made the yard feel smaller than it was. She understood there was more in the answer, but by then she had learned that some truths needed room before they could be spoken. The county investigation found that Graham Ellis had used copies of estate documents to support a transfer Helen never approved. Northlake Residential withdrew its claim after the original survey. Thomas's letter, the camera footage, and the subcontractor's statement were reviewed together. A later civil settlement covered Helen's legal expenses, but Darius never treated the outcome like a victory over another person. He told Maya that justice was not a celebration of someone else losing everything. Justice was what happened when the truth finally became strong enough to protect the people who had been ignored. Helen kept her home, though she stopped treating it like a museum for the life she once had with Thomas. The rear portion of the yard became a covered community workshop with long work tables, storage cabinets, and a row of donated tools. Darius named it the Thomas Whitmore Workshop because the old man had taught him that good craftsmanship was measured by what remained standing after the builder was gone. Twice a week, Darius taught basic carpentry to teenagers, unemployed parents, and men raising children alone. Helen managed the schedule and brought coffee every morning. Maya painted a wooden sign for the entrance that read, "Build what stays." Darius pretended not to notice that Helen placed it where everyone entering through the new gate would see it first. Rachel's progress was slower and less certain. She completed counseling, attended every supervised visit, and stopped making promises she could not keep. At first, Maya spoke to her carefully, as if one wrong sentence might make her mother disappear again. Rachel did not demand forgiveness. She showed up. She called at the time she said she would call. She attended a parent conference and listened without trying to explain the years she had missed. She remembered the date of Maya's school music program and arrived 20 minutes early. These were small acts, but Darius knew trust returned in small pieces because that was how it had left. On the night of the music program, Darius sat in the front row exactly where Maya had asked him to sit. Helen was beside him. Rachel sat 3 rows back with her counselor, her hands folded tightly in her lap. When Maya walked onto the stage, she found her father first. Then she searched the room until she saw Rachel. The tension left her shoulders, and she began to sing. After the program, Rachel approached Darius near the parking lot. "Thank you for letting me come," she said. "You earned the visit," he answered. She nodded. "I know that is not the same as earning her trust." "No, but it is where you start." Rachel looked past him toward Helen, who was helping Maya carry a cardboard display covered in silver stars. "Are you and my mother together?" Darius did not answer quickly. "We are learning how to be honest with each other." Rachel gave a tired smile. "That sounds more serious than together." "Maybe it is." For the first time, she looked at him without accusation. "Take care of her," she said. Darius glanced toward Maya. "Which one?" Rachel's smile trembled. "Both." Later that evening, Darius returned to Helen's house to secure the workshop after a community class. The yard smelled of fresh cedar and damp soil. Helen sat on the porch beneath a warm yellow light, with 2 cups of coffee resting on the railing. Darius checked the new gate even though there was nothing wrong with it, then joined her. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The quiet no longer felt like avoidance. It felt earned. Helen finally asked, "Do you think people with this much history are allowed to begin again?" Darius looked at her. "People with this much history? People who waited too long to tell the truth. People who hurt each other by staying silent. People whose families already have opinions waiting outside every door." He lifted his cup but did not drink. "Beginning again is not the hard part. What is? Staying when it becomes uncomfortable." Helen studied him. "Is that a warning?" "It is a promise I do not make lightly." The back door opened, and Maya stepped onto the porch in her pajamas, holding the old courtroom photograph. She had found it inside a box of legal papers. "This picture made everyone angry," she said. Darius held out his hand, but she looked at it one more time before giving it to him. "It looks different now." "How?" Helen asked. Maya tilted her head. "Before, it looked like Grandma was stopping Dad from leaving. Now it looks like she was helping him stand." Darius looked at Helen, and something quiet passed between them. It was not rescue, and it was not debt. It was recognition. Maya walked down the porch steps, and opened the wide cedar gate. "A fence needs a gate," she said. "Otherwise it does not protect a family. It only keeps everyone apart." Darius set the photograph on the railing and stood. He offered Helen his hand. She took it without hesitation. Together they walked through the open gate toward Maya, not as a family pretending the past had disappeared, but as three people who had learned that healing did not require forgetting. It required honesty, patience, and the courage to leave a way back in. Behind them, the fence remained strong. In front of them, the gate stayed open.